Hi everyone, my name is Trevor. Welcome to my YouTube video NHL Trev. I have an amazing video for you today. Oh yeah. My video is about the blood red moons that are signs from God to the Jews and Christians, acknowledgement the Jews coming back to Israel, and warnings of conflict and evil, of the Antichrist or Satanists. God gave the promised land to the Jews as long as they keep the Lord's judgments. Then the Jews, they fell aside from the Lord and aside with the Romans and not keep the Lord's judgments. So God let their enemies have them take over, and so they had to flee Israel. And the prophecy goes that once again they'll come back to Israel and become a great nation again, and they did in 1948. The United Nations want to set up a new world order, basically a one world dictator. They say they pretty much have to save the world from ourselves. That's global warming and wars and conflict. To me, it just sounds like one big scam. They're just trying to get control of the world. If you look up the YouTube video, What is a New World Order, it gives you a good idea how things go together and with the United Nations and New World Order. So AD are the years after Christ was born, and BC was the years before. So in 2000 AD would be exactly 2,000 years ago when Jesus Christ was born. They'll give up to a month to a year difference because they didn't know exactly what month he was born on. When Jesus Christ was 30, he went out and started ministering. And then when he was 33, he was crucified. So about 3 years or so afterwards. Now the United Nations had 193 countries signed off on these 17 stable development goals for 2030. About the same time Jesus Christ started his ministry, 2,000 years ago. Now, in the prophecy of the 7-year peace treaty, the Antichrist signs the 7-year peace treaty, then breaks it halfway through. If you think about 7 years after 2030, halfway through would have been 3.5 years on 2033. So I find it quite a coincidence that both these events seem to happen exactly 2,000 years apart on the same year. Now, I also found a huge coincidence with the red blood moons. Notice these certain events and stuff come together like a huge coincidence. Okay. Now, have you ever heard of the 4 red blood moons? Known as the blood red moon tetrad. A tetrad is when 4 blood red moons happen in a row of a total eclipse. So I decided to go on this website called timeanddate.com to look up these tetrads. Because I remember watching this show called Sid Roth's It's Supernatural on the 4 red blood moons about these tetrads happening on the Jewish feast days, about how that was an extremely rare occurrence, and I would recommend and go watch that episode. Okay, now when I was on that site, timeanddate.com, I noticed more coincidences about these tetrads. Now I made a list of these blood red moons starting from the 1900s to 2033 that you can see here. Now there's no other blood red moons total eclipse in between of this on my list. They're all here. Now I noticed that the first one happened 4 years before World War I had started, in 1909 and 1910. And World War I started in 1914, 4 years later. And the next one happened 1928-29, 4 years before Hitler got in power in 1932. Now the next two after that, 1949, 1950, and 1967 and 1968, they happened on the Jewish feast, which was extremely rare, and 1948, Israel got its independence after thousands of years. And then there was 4 red blood moons in 1949 and 50, and the next one happened 1967-68, right after the 6-Day War. Now these are extremely rare occurrences, being that the last one happened in the late 1400s, when Columbus sailed to America. Now the next tetrad happened in 1985 and 86, in about 4 years before the Gulf War in 1990. George W. Bush takes over Iraq in 1990, then makes a New World Order speech in 1991. Then this United Nations make up this Agenda 21. If you haven't heard what that is, you should look it up. It's for what they're going to do whenever they get control of the world. So they made this Agenda 21 in 1992. Then this last one in 2015, they made this Global Civilization 17 Goals for 2030. So when George W. Bush took over Iraq, you could see how this war goes with the United Nations. And the next one after that happened in 2003 and 2004. Now this one's a little different with the blood red moons happening right in the invasion of Iraq war in 2003. What's different about this one was 9/11 happened. Then they invaded Afghanistan and they decided to attack Iraq later on. And what I think is these events were leading up to other events like ISIS and other wars in the Middle East. That's why I wonder about this Tetrad in 2003. Now in 2014 2015, the last blood red moon happened in September 2015. Right at the same time of these signing these 17 goals. These 17 goals for stabilization development for 2030. Now that red blood moon was a super red blood moon, which makes it even more rare. Now the next Tetrad after that is not supposed to happen until 2032, 2033. Okay, now what I was like talking about before with the Antichrist and the 17 goals with the UN, that both of these events are going to happen around 2033, with the Christ was crucified 2,000 years ago from then, with a Tetrad happening at that time. I do believe this could be signs of end of days and the second coming of Christ. Now to show you how rare this is, if you look at timeanddate.com, you can see that there's no Tetrads between 1582 and 1908, and 17 to the period of 2156, but 8 being the time of this video I'm talking about here. Now what it looks like to me with these red moon Tetrads, that God is warning us about these big wars and what the United Nations are doing. And the blood red moons on feast days are acknowledgement of the Jews, and maybe even Christians. Because that's when, after World War One, League of Nations started, and World War Two, the United Nations started. You want to know what the next two wars have to do with the United Nations? The Gulf War and the Iraq War. Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. both invaded Iraq, and with the Tetrad happening on those wars. And George W. Bush mentioned about the New World Order and made speeches about the New World Order and how the United Nations will take over someday. Now, if you want to, you can go look up this New World Order speech on the internet. My name is Trevor Meyer, and I'd like to thank you for watching my YouTube video. And you should invite your friends and family to watch too. Thank you very much. Bye. Hey, I'm a kitty cat. Hey, everyone. My name is Smokey.